Coming to you live from Hack Shack Studios. Hey everyone, RT Bear here, 35-year comic book veteran, working for mainly Marvel, DC, little upstart Image Comics. Yeah, in the 90s, did just a little bit of work in the industry. Actually, a lot of bit of work. Yeah, I have a whole lot of stuff I want to talk to you guys about. One of them is just big, huge news with CHRONO Mechanics, the CHRONO Mechanics business. And I'm going to do, it's not really going to be a Walt's fault, but there's something I want to turn you guys onto that I loved as a kid. And I think overall the theme of this show is going to be everybody's kind of got cabin fever and we all need to be entertained or want to be entertained. Since there's not a lot to do, we can't go out and interact because of the thing we're not supposed to talk about or use the name of. I know we at the T-Bear household are going back and forth with whether this thing is real, a social experiment, or what the hell is going on. It's the coronavirus. I'm just going to say it. I don't give a crap anymore. I'm tired of big government stepping in and telling me what I should and shouldn't do. Case in point, man, I've been doing surveys amongst my friends, people I know personally. Nobody's been affected by this coronavirus. So they're shutting all this shit down. Everybody's affected. And I don't know of one person firsthand that has it or has a family member that has it. So I have no idea what's going on. But let's say hi to everybody. We have Kevin. Kevin is the big reason why it is the big news, T-Bear, and this is why we are here today, because Kevin helped out in a big way, and because of his generosity, we are going to be able to be generous with you guys as well. So how about that for a setup? Hold on for a sec. I got to do something. That was rude. That was rude, but you guys didn't have to hear it. I muted, hopefully. So yeah, we got Kevin, and so you guys will be thanking Kevin big time later once I tell you what I am going to do. I had a big old conversation with Pamela last night, and she said it is a good idea and we should do it. And hey, Gus Tyler Bush, what's up? We have Sheldon. Hey. We've come to snuff the rooster. Third, fourth, after I type this. I borrow. Hey, what's up? Cam, you are such an amazing ally to Hack Shack Studios, this YouTube channel, and all my crowdfunding. So thank you guys. You guys are quite amazing, and I would not be here without you. So let's keep it going. Oh my gosh, I think we're 8 subs away from another 500. So it'll be 2,500 subs for this station, for this channel. That's big time for me. That is big time for me. So if you haven't subbed, please do so. And please like and help spread the word. Give me a thumb up. That would greatly help the algorithms. But we have Kevin. Kevin, man, or not Kevin, I mean Adam. Thanks, Kevin. Adam had a great show on earlier this morning, and I wasn't up early enough, but I caught the tail end of it. So if you guys don't know, Kevin, I keep saying Kevin. Adam Post has College of the Darn, and it's up right now on Indiegogo, and he has a killer YouTube. So go by and subscribe to Adam Post. Not Kevin, but Adam Post. Everybody's saying thanks, Adam, or thanks, Kevin, because of Kevin's generosity. Oh, was that a cough, Art? It was more of a snort than a cough. Yeah. No, I'm fine, you guys. Hell yeah. Eric Weather's got a campaign going too, Flying Fortress. Go check him out. as well. Look at all the superstars we have in the chat here. We have Eric. We have Adam Post. Kevin says it's coming. Art, take it serious. Look at what is going on in Europe. Yeah. I mean, we are, but I see more of the. I see the other side of it more than the sick side of it. So it's one of those things, like everybody's affected that I know more from the shutdowns and the quarantines and all this other stuff and the raids on the supermarkets and things like that versus anybody actually being sick. And I'm not wishing for any of this. I don't want any of it to happen, but we are erring on the side of caution. The one thing that has got me still believing in all of this is it's hard to believe that all these corporations and the government and everybody would take it to this extent if there wasn't some reality. The only problem is to what extent. And I think they're keeping us, if it is true to this extent, they're keeping us fairly ignorant. And maybe that's just because they don't want mass hysteria. But around here, I don't know if it could get any worse. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. All right, so I'm gonna bring my buddy in, and I think Joe can comment a little bit on because I think you made a run to Costco or something this morning, right, Joe?
Yeah, I ran to 3 different grocery stores, and Costco was the third one. That was quite an adventure.
Yeah, we're good for the next maybe 3 weeks, but yeah, I heard that. I mean, we went to Ralph's I think Monday, and there was a line all the way around the parking lot. So, and I've seen footage of what is it, Costco? It looks absolutely insane.
Yeah, I got there an hour before they normally open. So normally the one by me, it opens at 10 a.m. and I guess they were opening an hour early but not advertising that fact, because I got there at 9 and the line was already wrapped around the building to get into the front door.
Yeah, it's weird because there's a part of me that doesn't really believe things until there's some kind of hard fact, like I said earlier, like somebody being sick or you know, some kind of proof like that. But this is real. You know, people waiting in line and stuff. I just don't know to what extent I should actually react to it. You know what I mean? Like, should I start stockpiling things? Should I, you know what I mean? Or should I still act like, you know, like slightly conservative where, you know, we do have supplies for a couple weeks, but we don't have supplies for 3 months, you know?
Right.
You know, how far did we go?
Yeah, we've never been quote unquote preppers, but we have always had certain things on hand, like clean water, because we lived through several years of out of control wildfires that burned down large areas of San Diego County. And I know you guys have had it in Orange and LA County as well. So, I mean, there was a while where every odd year we were getting hit with massive wildfires. It started in 2003. We got hit again in 2005, 2007. And so after that 2003, it was just months of insane wildfires. We started keeping a few things on hand just because when the electrical grid goes down, one of the things that a lot of people aren't aware of is that you not only lose your power, but the water company, if they can't pump water, then you don't get water to your house either.
Yeah, it stagnates too.
But, you know, back to what you were asking me about for today, it was surreal, man. Like I said, we have never been preppers per se, but we try to keep certain staples on hand to at least last us a couple weeks. And so I figured we'd be good with that. And I hadn't been to do any serious shopping for a couple of weeks. And I don't know if my timing was off or the stores have just been cleared out for that long, but I went to Sprouts. So for those who aren't in Southern California, it's basically a grocery store that has a lot of healthy type of food, a lot of organic food, a lot of health supplements, things like that. And there were entire shelves that were completely bare. And I actually passed a guy who was definitely a hoarder and was loading his cart with every single box of pancake mix that he could fit in there. And I'm looking at him as I walk by, and he kind of looks up and says, "Dude, what's up?"
It's a party.
I'm just thinking,
He's gonna have a pancake party, man.
you're having way too much fun with this. And so I was able to get some stuff there, but not others. So, like, for example, all of the sliced cheese was gone. So I went to an Albertsons, which around here is a big grocery store chain. And almost all the sliced cheese was gone. I did manage to get a package of sliced mozzarella. And so I head home, I unload everything, get ready to go to Costco. And, I figure I'll be good to at least get a decent spot in line if I'm there an hour early. But like I said, they actually opened the doors an hour early, and that line was already wrapped all the way around the building, out the back, and almost across the street to a nearby McDonald's.
Wow.
So it was insane. And once I got in, one good thing I'll say, and I hope other grocery stores are doing this too, is that they actually had set up a not only traffic control in the parking lot, but also foot traffic control to get in and out of the store. And they had certain aisles blocked off so that they could direct people, because everyone wanted bottled water, toilet paper, and paper towels. And so I was able to get what I needed without too much trouble. The one thing I wasn't able to get anything of was toilet paper, because they were completely cleaned out. But one of the things I noticed in the first store I went to, and then also with Costco, is it seems like the stores, even though they're getting cleaned out, they're still getting restocked. So I think with some of the essentials like toilet paper, bottled water, that stuff, paper towels, if you don't get it the first time around, I would encourage people to try and keep their eyes and ears open. And I actually was talking to some of the store employees to try and get a handle on when they might get restocked. And sometimes someone knows, sometimes they don't. But I haven't heard anything or read anything so far about the store supply chains getting cut. So that's good.
Yeah, I think at this point it's all good. It's more for me and the family, it's more of the not knowing that makes me nervous, because I see a lot of that seems to me like overcompensation. Like things are closing down, all this stuff's being affected, but I don't see any of this virus. I don't see any of that effect. And I know that this is supposed to try to stop that from happening. So maybe it's a good thing. I don't really know, but I don't really trust my government that much, and this thing seems completely unbelievable. If you really try to bring this into any kind of realistic, like based on what they're saying and what's happening, I mean, they're even talking about martial law possibly in LA County.
Really?
You see police officers in supermarkets, guarding toilet paper like it's Fort Knox. Like you see these images, and to me, it's if you really stop and you take a moment and you think about what is really happening here based on what the information you're given, this is absolutely frightening. I mean, to the core, this is absolutely frightening. This is like like a crazy, all those plague stories you hear and all of this stuff. This is the tip of the iceberg of that type of, story. And I try not to think about it to this extent, but every day I keep hearing new things. I keep hearing new, this is shut down, this is happening, this is whatever. And the thing is, I'm actually kind of getting paralyzed with some fear here because, like I said, when you really do think about the ramifications and what we're gearing up for, it's mind-boggling. It's absolutely frightening. It's absolutely frightening. So I try not to think about those things. But last night I had a moment where I actually had to. My daughter and I were having a conversation, and it gets very sobering because we can make jokes about toilet paper and things like that, and it does help, kind of smooth over some of the reality of it. But if whatever this thing we're gearing up for, if you think about it in any kind of realistic terms, it's absolutely frightening. So I don't mean to scare anybody, but and I wasn't expecting to talk this deeply on this subject, but it does go into what came out, the good that came out of the conversation that my family had last night. And just to back up, Chrono Mechanics got to the 35K stretch goal, which is the movie script. So the movie script is 116 pages. And so I had an idea, and it's based on a friend, a fan, a supporter. I can never say his last name, but his name's Steven. And he said, Art, why don't you put out PDFs of some of the books that you have now? Because there's a lot of people that can't get out and that are kind of on lockdown and just need to be entertained. So that idea, and then with Kevin's generosity, which got us to the 35K stretch goal last night on Chrono Mechanics, I'm going to, here's the big news, drum roll, we're going to send out the PDFs of the movie script ASAP. So my wife's putting that together now, Pamela, and later this week we should start being able to get every one of the backers the PDFs of the movie script. So you'll have 116 pages to entertain yourself, and maybe, have an hour or so of enjoyment that you won't have to think about, what's actually, happening around us. Just a little bit of escapism. And wanted to thank you for all the backers and everything like that. But also, it's just my small way and my, my family's small way of trying to get back to you guys. Just lighten everybody's spirits a little bit. Like I said, I mean, when you do think about it, or when I did think about it last night in a very realistic way, my daughter brought a lot of new information to us last night, and that's why we had the deeper conversation. But there's always that, and then there's the bright side, or there's the good side. So that is what we are going to do, you guys. We're going to start sending out these PDFs, so you will have some entertainment for a while. So Cam says, cool. We have Kevin, you guys, just thank Kevin in the chat because he's the reason we could do this. So thank you so much, Kevin. Your support, your Hack Shack Studios support, all my independent projects and my original artwork, everything. Kevin is amazing. Big time supporter, and I thank you for that. We have Lady Celtic Moon, or Celtic. So cool. Yes, we're going to get these things to you guys. And let me know what you think, because it's not going to be a spoiler of the comic book. There's going to be some similarities, but the movie script is a completely different beast. It is enough like the comic that it can be connected, but it is kind of its own entity. Okay, Inkwell. You're great, Art, and you have great art. Well, thank you. Oh, Cam says, thanks, Kevin. So yeah, so all you guys that have backed Chrono Mechanics, you will have a PDF of the movie script coming your way soon. And if there's anybody that hasn't backed this book, please do so, because I'll send you a movie script too. So what do you think of that, Joe?
I think that's fantastic. Sorry, I was muted for a second. My kids are home from school, so I've got my. I'm trying to keep the noise to a dull roar over here.
Oh, it's totally cool. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I liked the idea when you were talking about it. I'm not sure if that was I first heard you talk about it privately or publicly, but I think it's fantastic. So I can't wait to read it. I for any aspiring writers out there, or even artists too, who are always interested in working on their storytelling skills. I think it's really valuable to see the same property that is adapted into different formats, because it really shows you the different structural things that you have to keep in mind if you're writing for film versus comics versus novels. So yeah, I like it. I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, and I think it shows versatility in the IP. Like if the IP can translate to different mediums, then it shows that it has legs. I'm also working with a partner on a novel, an actual.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, and so we're hopefully we're on the third act. I know that books aren't broken down that way, but basically like the last like 70 pages, 60, 70 pages of the finale are just kind of, we're tightening it up right now. So we were going to make it part of this campaign, but I think keeping it fairly streamlined is the better idea. And we might do a crowdfund for the novel later. But yes, Comics Legend is right. I will shave my eyebrows at 100K. Somebody, maybe it was Cam or somebody on Twitter was saying, yeah, Art will shave body parts or something. So you guys heard it here. If we get to 100K, I will, as a stretch goal, I will shave my eyebrows. You have that. Cross my heart. Cross my heart. Yes. And we have, this is Spirit's Car. Quarantine is a good time to read classic and Western civilization. Read them before you are there expunged from the culture. Yeah, just read. I mean, there's always kind of pros and cons, pluses and minuses to just about anything. So if you can flip it and look at the bright side or the positive side, good can come out of these things. We were at the supermarket the other day, like I said, Monday, and I was in the line for the toilet paper while the family was trying to get eggs. I'll tell you, eggs are harder to get than toilet paper, you guys. And so I guess this lady that had 2 rolls, because they were only letting you have 2 packages of them. And she overheard my wife and daughter talking about the toilet paper situation. And she said, "Oh, you need toilet paper?" And then she just gave my wife and kid the toilet paper.
Oh, great.
Yeah. And so then it was really lucky that I just showed up there and I had my 2 rolls there. And so then we handed her it back. But, there are people, you know what I mean? You're going to see this, and then you're going to see the crazies as well. So it's going to bring out the best, and it's going to elevate us. And then you're also going to see some really crappy stuff.
Yeah, I definitely saw both sides of the spectrum this morning.
Yeah. So Pamela's in the studio. I told them that you're going to start downloading the movie script PDFs.
Yeah. I think that Art and I were talking, and it just seems like there's so much, bad going on right now, and fear, and we thought, hey, this will be a great way to maybe alleviate some fear, to show people that things are going to be okay, and you can read and enjoy things for a while.
Yeah, at least for the time that you're reading the script. You know what I mean? And the cool thing about the script is, I don't mean to pat myself on the back, but it probably has more to do with Matt than me anyway. Matt is the co-writer on the movie script, Matthew J. Hillary. When you read this, right, it reads like a movie. Like as you're reading this script, you guys, you can see it as a movie. It's kind of like, Matt's so good. It's structured like a disaster film. So one of the things when you write movie scripts, you kind of have like these templates, and then you kind of build it around these templates. So, you know, when we were talking early on, he was saying like, oh, we'll do it like a disaster film. And I'm like, what do you mean a disaster film? And so then he keeps saying like, timelines are merging, people are coming in and out of reality. You know, there's all these anomalies. There's the earth shifting. There's some epic stuff in the novel, you guys. You guys will get to see, in your mind's eye, you will get to see the big machine. The big machine in this movie script is revealed. And so you get to see this, and it's a freaking disaster film. With a lot of other stuff, you know, brought in, so it doesn't feel like a disaster film, but structurally it is. And so as soon as he said that, I was like, "Holy crap! Now I can visualize it. Now we can get into, you know, the story itself." And there's a lot of characterization, and there's a lot of stuff going on there, and the world is really well fleshed out. I can't wait for you guys to read this movie script.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you had really early on you saw the potential for having not only this story that we're going to get in the book, in the comic, but you also saw that the universe there had so much potential to tell that same story in different formats. And then obviously, because of the concepts you're dealing with, if you wanted to, you could keep telling additional stories, well, to the end of time, pun intended.
Exactly. Yeah.
I love puns.
Yeah, there's a ton of them in this book. I like this.
The punnier, the better.
The punnier. I used to think that the Hulk said punny human as a kid. I was like, oh, that's funny. Puny human. I like the idea of Chrono Mechanics in different mediums. I could definitely see it as a rock opera. That would be badass. I want to write music. There's a musical number in the movie script, and I would love to write that song and play drums on it. That's my dream, is to actually be part of the movie soundtrack. And once again, pat myself on the back. I am a good enough drum player that I could pull it off.
If you did that, Art, you could have that as your soundtrack, and any promo videos you did, you could have that soundtrack.
Oh yeah. And I'm gonna do this soon. Oh, there's so many things happening on the Chrono Mechanics front. We have a cool video. You saw that last night, right, Pamela? It's a promo video for the comic. It kills, man. It kills. I'll be showing that to you guys soon as well.
Right on.
So yeah, I just wanted to update you guys on that. And we have Kevin Tomsit. Is that how is sit? Yeah, Tomsit. To thank for this. Thank you so much, Kevin. Sorry I butchered your last name, but I butcher everybody's name. Some people are naturals at that. Don't those people piss you off? like they know like, oh, because it ends with this is the origin of the language, or this, you know what I mean? Like some people can see T-Bear and go, oh, it's French, and they'll say it, and then other people go Thibert or Thee-Bear or Thurbert or whatever the hell it is. What was yours? Yours was Wineset, your maiden name, and what were Winesetti? Winset.
My favorite was one time I got a letter from someone, and it was addressed to Pamela Urineset. I love that one. I kept that envelope for years because it always made me laugh.
So what did you looked up your origin, and your origin is Is it it's European? It's English or is it German?
But from my dad's side, the Wineset side, that's German. And then on my mom's side, we were British, Irish, coming out of that area, and also American Indian.
Yeah, I think we all have a little native Indian. Man, I'll tell you what pisses me off is should I tell my Johnny Depp story? Oh man, I love the Lone Ranger and Tonto, and I love that the Lone Ranger and Tonto, or the Lone Ranger is a Reed, and he's related to the Green Hornet, which is Britt Reed. And so I love that idea, like the lineage hero, and I love the whole concept of the lone gunman, the vigilante, the Lone Ranger. God, it's such a killer idea. And so then Disney made that movie, and then Johnny Depp was cast as Tonto, and I'm like, there's one iconic role for Indians, for Native Americans to play, and that's freaking Tonto. And Hollywood whitewashed Tonto and gave it to Johnny Depp. And then Johnny Depp, the press release was, I'm 1/3 Blackfoot tribe or whatever the bullshit is. I'm like, holy shit, dude.
How many pure Indians could have taken that role?
There's only one Indian, like pure Indian, that I know by name. Is that Jay Silverheels, right? And he played Tonto in the TV show. And so
he was awesome,
right?
He's my hero.
Yeah. Pamela didn't. She wasn't a Lone Ranger. She was more of a Tonto.
I was a Tonto fan.
And to be honest, the Green Hornet, the cooler character, really is Kato. Anyway.
It's Kato.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. So I just like, Hollywood, you guys are such hypocrites. And then they gave a bunch of trinkets and blankets and fire water to the Indians so they would sign off on the movie. There's actually, in some of the behind the scenes footage for the Lone Ranger, the Disney movie, they show Hollywood doing what Hollywood does, and they're going to the Blackfoot tribe with Johnny Depp. So they go, oh my gosh, it's a movie star. And you know what? That's exactly what they did. And then they gave him a bunch of money, a bunch of hush money, so those guys would just not raise a bunch of stink about not being represented. I love that Green Hornet was related to the Lone Ranger. Oh, you didn't know that? Yeah.
Isn't that awesome?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm going to do a show on this, you guys. I have some working drawings too. Years and years ago, I'm such a Green Hornet fan, I pitched to DC Comics a Green Hornet story. It was the 3-issue series, and wrote it all out with a partner, but I think you weren't around at that time. No, you did another pitch for Superman. And so partner and we wrote this thing up, and it was greenlit. DC greenlit this thing. And so I was going to do write, pencil, and ink a Green Hornet series. And so what ended up happening is that they couldn't get the rights, or they could get the rights, but there were two entities that were claiming ownership of the Green Hornet. And so DC and Warner Brothers didn't want to get in the middle of that because they didn't want to get into a legal battle. It just wasn't worth it for them. And I don't blame them, because it's just 3 issues of comic book stories. And so, but one of the ideas was in the story that Britt Reed finds out that his lineage is the Lone Ranger. So one of the scenes was he goes up to the attic and he's going through some stuff. He has this, how in movies and the storytelling, you kind of have this feeling, right? You kind of you're drawn to this moment or this place. And so he wakes up in the middle of the night. He has some kind of what do they call those dreams where you're kind of dreaming of who you're supposed to be or where you're supposed to go. And so then he wakes up in a cold sweat and goes up to the attic and starts rummaging through stuff. And he finds Lone Ranger, like a badge. He finds the badge, the Ranger badge. And so he finds that first, and then he finds a silver bullet, and then he finds the gun belt, and then he finds the mask. And so then he starts realizing that this was a destiny thing, he's pulled into destiny. And so one of the things is that In the story, they never really explained the Green Hornet, what the Green Hornet means. I'm going off on all kinds of tangents, you guys. But what the Green Hornet is. And so one of the dreams and one of the visions that he's having is of this Green Hornet, and of this dragon. And so then what you find out is, like, in this, Cato's a monk. He's a monk, and he's kind of he was this badass, but he's kind of atoning for his past violent life. And so he's having these visions too. But since he's this monk and he's the spiritual guy, he actually is more in tune with what these things mean, what these visions mean. So then that morning, knock, knock, knock on the door of this mansion, because Britt Reed is a newspaper mogul, the Daily Sentinel. He opens the door, and there's this shaved-headed guy, this little shaved-headed guy that basically is there to tell him what those visions mean. So there's no such thing as a Green Hornet. So what I was using is, they're like spirit guides, like because Cato's the dragon, and then the Green Hornet is literally the Green Hornet. So these are kind of like spirit guides in the story, because the Green Hornet, they never even gave, like, why is he called the Green Hornet? I know that old comic book and these type of like stories, they were just called the Black Sentinel, or like they just had names. The Green Arrow, like, why is he the Green Arrow?
Right.
Yeah. So that was that, which leads to Joe. Did you do a little research before we went on air?
I did, and I'm a big fan of films from that era, and I had never come across that one before.
This is definitely a cult classic, you guys. And this is another thing. So I guess thematically, what we're doing with this stream is trying to turn you on to things that you can do, while you have cabin fever, while you're in quarantine and lockdown. For people like Joe and I, we're always on quarantine and lockdown because we're artists and writers. So we never go anywhere anyway. But hey, Joe, why don't you tell them what we're going to talk about after, next?
Sure. Well, for those in the chat, if you were born, I guess, late 80s and onward, you might not know, but there used to be this thing called the Magical World of Disney. And it was a series. It went from 1954 through 1991, and Disney would release original content, movies, miniseries, all kinds of stuff. A lot of times it was on the weekends. Sometimes it would be a TV movie that was done in prime time during the week. But at any rate, they had all kinds of shows that they would do, and a lot of it was very much, well, Art, you can correct me if I'm wrong, maybe it was all of it was not so much targeted towards kids as the family in general. It was very much family programming.
And one of the interesting asides, you know why these things happened, Joe? Because Disney at that time went and did a lot of shows in London and different parts of like Europe, because I saw a documentary on this, that when Disney, during the war times, the Second World War, the Disney studios were destitute. They were destitute, but they were still releasing some of their movies and stuff in different places in Europe. But what was happening is all that revenue that was coming was not going to the Disney studios. While the war times were going on, they held that money until after the war. So then I'm not sure what happened, like the details of it. Either they didn't have the money to pay Disney back, or what happened. But in form of restitution, Disney was credited with like that he could go to Europe, he could go to England, he could go to these different places, and he could film for next to nothing. So basically, all these facilities and all these actors and all of this this infrastructure was given to the Disney studios. So that's why at the time, around that early '60s period, you see a lot of British actors. You see a lot of Disney go and do live action in these different locations because it was cost effective for him, and it was because of that money that was owed to him. And so the show that we're talking about was there's like these moments in your life when you're a kid, and then you realize, you look back and you go, well, this is why I'm who I am today. And we talked about the Green Hornet and Kato, but one of the other ones was Dr. Sin. And Dr. Sin, aka the Scarecrow, was a serialized show that was aired on the Magical World of Disney. Is that right, Joe?
Yeah, the Magical World of Disney.
Yeah, and so what Disney did is he bought the rights from, I guess, Russell Thorndike, and Russell Thorndike is a novelist, and there's a series of books, and that's too, if you guys can get those, that would be something to read while you are, experiencing your cabin fever. But the first book was Dr. Sin, A Tale of the Romney Marsh. And so one of the cool things, Joe, about the series that Disney filmed, it's filmed in the Romney Marsh area. And there's a church because the Scarecrow is a vicar. I think his name is, what is his name, actually? It's, holy crap, I had it. It's like Christian something. It's his last name's Sin.
Yeah, S-Y-N.
Yeah, they call him Dr. Sin, but I forgot his first name.
And I had it here. Let me see if I can bring it up again. And Dr. Christopher Sin.
Yeah, it is Christopher then. I thought it was Christian, but yeah, Christopher Sin. And so there's a church in that show, and that's an actual church in that area. So that graveyard, all that stuff, that's not a set. I love stuff like that it's all filmed on location. So the show has like a really cool, authentic feel to it. But it's all based on the Russell Thorndike novels. And those novels, keep in mind, you guys, there's another theme I want to get into, which is mass vigilantes, vigilanteism. And because I realize I love those ideas. That's why I love Batman so much, and like the Green Hornet and all those ideas, because it's mass vigilanteism. And so the date that this book was published was 1915, you guys. This predates all of these ideas. And there were other films. There was a film in 1937 that was done before Disney. And then The Scarecrow of Romney Marsh was in 1963. I was 2 years old, you guys. The seeds were planted in my life at 2 and 5 years old. So yeah, I mean, it's a pretty cool idea about. Let me see if I can find some of the images. Joe, are you familiar with the backstory? Or do you want me to? Because I'm talking a lot.
Yeah, I looked it up. I can break it down if you like.
Okay, I'm going to find some images while you talk about maybe some of the story and the concept and everything.
Okay. So essentially, the idea is that the good Dr. Sin, he's a country priest, and there was this thing going on at the time in Britain where the Navy wanted sailors. They could never keep enough sailors enlisted in the Navy. So they had this practice called impressment, and there were these groups called press gangs, and they would go around targeting young men, and often young man meant teenage boy or even younger. And they would go around and essentially kidnap these young men.
It's crazy, right? You heard about these things like the French Foreign Legion and all that stuff, but man, this is some crazy ideas.
And it's actually it was one of the things, although it's hardly ever talked about in history classes about the American Revolution, on the long list of grievances that British colonists in the U.S. had against King George and the British Parliament, one of them was press gangs that they would go around and they would hang out either in pubs or near pubs, and sometimes they would get young men drunk to the point where they would pass out, and then they would carry them onto the ship, and they'd wake up and they were pressed into service for the British Navy.
And once they're on the ship, there's nothing they can do. I think there's a scene like that in the show.
Yeah, once you're on the ship, there's nowhere for you to go. I mean, you're out at sea, and almost nobody could swim. And even if you could, you'd either get eaten by a shark or you'd drown because you were so far away from shore. But at any rate, that was one of the things that was happening in the colonies. But it was a much bigger problem in the United Kingdom. And so the backdrop to this story of the Scarecrow of Romney Marsh is that there were these press gangs going around kidnapping young men and pressing them into service for the Navy. And so Dr. Sin sees what's going on, and he decides to try to fight back against this. So he conceals his identity with a sackcloth mask. And sackcloth was, in today's world, you could kind of think of it as either burlap or canvas. It's a rough cloth, and he made a scarecrow mask out of this sackcloth. And so he took on this identity of a masked vigilante and led a rebellion against the British Navy, specifically against these press gangs.
Yeah, I mean, well said, man. You said it way better than I could have. Yeah, so this guy is like a vicar, but you get the sense too that he has a little bit of a checkered past. And the fun thing about it is, he's kind of the devil and the angel at the same time. You know what I mean? So so he does, like, he scares the shit out of people, basically, like intimidation, like that's why I like Batman a lot. I don't like Batman where he's just a straight up like superhero character. I like him more where he's like the scary vigilante guy, because I think that's where the originality is. Mm-hmm. And if you're going to dress up like a bat, it makes the most sense. So yeah, so this guy is a holy man, a vicar. And, by day, he's trying to keep everything cool and calm and collected. But at night, he goes and rights these wrongs and tries to basically free these, these kids and fight against the government that's basically doing these evil things. And so he's also he's kind of a character that's on, like, he hangs out with the heads, like the people of power and stuff like that. So, he gets the inside scoop on what's happening, these captains and colonels and different people. So, he knows how to, fight and infiltrate these things that are happening. And he has a gang. Let me see if I can find some other images. This is low res, but this is a gang, and I'm not gonna spoil who this character is. It's a cool reveal in the story, and I think you guys can. There's a lot of bootleg stuff on the internet, so I think on YouTube you can find these. They're not the best quality, but if you try to buy them, they're very, very expensive. If you can even get them, because like I said, it's kind of a cult classic. So they're really hard to find, the actual DVDs or any of that stuff. I read somewhere, and I don't know if it's true, just really quick, that it might be on Disney Plus, or it's coming to Disney Plus. But
yeah,
okay.
I'd love to see a lot of that stuff on there. My wife and I got a free year of the service when we got our unlimited data plan through Verizon. And so we, just the other night, we got it set up and we were looking through it. and I haven't gotten a chance to look at everything, but that's one of the things that I'm hoping to find on there.
Yeah, it's really cool. And he has a gang of like these are like the main group right here, the three of them. But I think the other guys that because what he does is it's kind of like the Shadow as well, like where he would recruit like people from the community or from from the city, and anyone he helps kind of becomes the Shadow. So like the idea was the Shadow knows, right? So the reason he knows is because he has all these eyes and ears of people that are all around him. So one of the things, it's kind of like it's also a little Robin Hood-ish, where these guys are friends of the community. So if they help you or help your family, then those families and those people help the Scarecrow group or the gang. So then, there's really this whole underground network that's happening to defeat and fight back, these armies, these group of soldiers. So this scene is really, really cool. I don't want to spoil it too much because I want you guys to watch it. But if you look at this guy's got a noose around his neck. They're gonna hang this dude, and you know what? They do. They hang this guy. They're trying to get a confession out of him. And so they have a lot of other people that are witnessing this situation that they want to intimidate. So they hang this guy as like, this is what we're willing to do to get information and to, bring these guys down. So if you're aligning yourself with, the government or whatever, these colonial soldiers, then this is what potentially is going to happen to you. So you might want to think twice. So they hang this guy as an example. So it's pretty intense. I mean, for a 63 TV show.
Yeah. Well, there was something I was reading about it where, oh yeah, so back to what you were saying about, how you like Batman better as the intimidating, almost force of nature. One of the things I was reading about the Reverend Christopher Sin was that he, similar to Bruce Wayne being a brilliant mind as well as this physical specimen, it was saying that the good vicar, I think they called him Reverend Doctor Christopher Sin.
I think on the show they call him Victor a lot. Yeah,
okay, Victor. So saying that he was a brilliant scholar from Queen's College, Oxford, and that he was a swashbuckler who could ride and fence and sail and whatnot. So I think it's interesting how we in modern superhero mythology, we often think of heroes like Batman or the Phantom, the Shadow, the Green Hornet as kind of the early swashbucklers, but that archetype has existed for a very long time.
Yeah, is it 1907? When was it? 1917 or 1907? I don't remember when this was written. So this predates the Shadow, predates all those ideas.
It says here that the first film was Dr. Sin in 1937.
Yeah, 1915. It was originally published in 1915.
Okay, the first book.
Yeah. So the concept was 1915. So this definitely predates radio, and it predates like the Shadow and those ideas.
Right.
So one of the things I like to do, and I would love for somebody. I have a documentary idea. Kevin Burns, where are you? You know how like School of Rock, they did the rock tree, like where rock kind of came from. So
yeah,
it has all the different branches that branch off. That was based on a guy that did a documentary on like the evolution of metal. So that idea was kind of based on those documentaries. So I'd like to see a documentary that's based on like like these type of ideas that we're talking about right now, like what was the first mass vigilante? You know, where did it come from, and how did it influence, you know, all of these other things? Because I find that stuff fascinating, like where these ideas came from. Like I even did a little bit of research. You know how like Batman had whited out eyes, like you couldn't pupils. Well, it was the Phantom. The Phantom, Lee Falk's Phantom, was the first comic book character to ever do that. So that idea came from the Phantom, and then Batman, then Bob Kane or whoever whoever did Batman, which is always, you know, like was it, you know, Bill Finger or whoever, but
Right.
yeah, that's where that came from. So I like those ideas. You know, who made who, where did this stuff come from? But I'm going to go back to screen share. But
You know, what's interesting is that in the same time frame as Dr. Sin, that book came out in 1915. On the other side of, almost the other side of the world, you had Zorro.
yeah, Zorro. Okay, there's a documentary, you guys. I'm gonna recommend it. I think you're. Oh my gosh, that was a great call, dude. Yeah, Zorro is about that same time, but I think it still is after. Do you have a Zorro release date, or like when the?
I can pull one up here.
I think it's real close. If I remember the little research I did a while back, I think it came out after this, but very, very close to about the same time as Dr. Sin.
Okay. 1919 by American pulp writer Johnston McCulley.
And there's a great backstory on that too, on how that came about and things. Supposedly, Zorro's based on a real person.
Yeah, he's set during the era of Spanish California from 1769 through 1821.
Yeah, so Dr. Sin predates that.
Predates him by about 40 years or so.
No,
although
19.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I should clarify.
Years.
So the fictional character's time frame, Dr. Sin, predates Zorro by about 40 years, but the actual publication
is 4 years.
Yeah, 4 years. 1915 versus Zorro in 1919.
1919. Yeah, and you know, like Princess Bride. You know the if you read the backstory on Zorro, I think that's where they got those ideas, because there was something about sailing the seas. Like there's this whole like backstory to not only the creation of Zorro, but Zorro himself as well. Actually, you know what? As soon as I'm done here, I'm going to rewatch a lot of those things too, because I got cabin fever. But this is Patrick McGoohan, and if you know that name, he was the original prisoner from the 60s. I think BBC TV show, which also is, I think, the mythology of the prisoner. And the ideas behind it are kind of a lot more fun than watching it. I think some of it, the early stuff, the early couple episodes are pretty good, but then towards the end, it seems to get a little campy and weird. But the beginning, like maybe first 6 episodes, are pretty strong.
That was one of those shows I've heard a lot about, but have never seen.
Yeah, it's about like if you were a spy or somebody that knew too much about your government, what the government would do to you if you could hurt them. So instead of assassinating you or killing you or doing whatever, they bring you to an island. And so most of the people that are on this island know some kind of deep, dark secret about the government or about the world. And so what happens while they're there is there's a lot of brainwashing techniques and things, so that not that they're going to be acclimated back to society, but that they just become more docile and like okay with their surroundings. So they're on an island and all their whims and everything is provided for them. But this Patrick McGoohan character, he's not okay with it. He's like, what is the catchphrase? I'm not a prisoner, I'm a free man. It's like, no, you're a number. So they're just trying to brainwash him. And it's kind of a neat social experiment. So if you like conspiracy theories or you like those kind of ideas, The Prisoner is also fun to watch. Man, I'm giving you guys a lot of stuff to help with your cabin fever here. So yeah, this Patrick McGowan was in a lot of Disney stuff, and that guy, I'll tell you right now, he's a badass actor, man. He's pretty cool. Even when he's not trying to be intimidating, he's pretty intimidating.
Yeah, he was one of the. I don't know if there's such a thing as a British Rat Pack, but I kind of think of him in that same group with Sean Connery and several other of their contemporaries.
Yeah, he's definitely cut out of that same mold. Yeah, that's a good call. The Man with Two Faces, the Vicar, kind and benevolent, loved by all, the Scarecrow, a demon ghost feared by oppressors. So I wonder if this has got to predate Lee Falk's Phantom as well. So the Phantom is the ghost who walks. So this is the demon ghost.
I'm going to see when the Phantom was first published.
And I like the idea, like the dual identities. Like Marvel, see, that's where DC still has them up, and I know DC is going to screw it all up. But Marvel, like, they didn't get into dual identities. And one of the cool things about like Batman and Superman is the dual identity thing. That's why Tim Burton's first Batman was really cool, because they played up the dual identity aspects, and also Richard Donner's first Superman, really gets into that dual identity aspect. And, like, I think contemporary Hollywood thinks it's corny or stupid, but I do think it's one of the more interesting ideas of these superhero or these mass vigilante ideas.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense too, just from the practicality aspect.
Yep.
You don't want your face to be known. And I think, didn't Marvel already screw up Peter Parker? Now everybody knows that Peter Parker's Spider-Man. Didn't they do that in the last movie?
They did it at the end of the last movie. It was one of those mid-credit scenes, I think.
Yeah, it's retarded. It's stupid, because the backlash is very real. Like, if you know that Peter Parker's, Spider-Man, what's going to stop you from going after Aunt May or anybody he loves?
Exactly. And that is exactly what happened whenever a particular villain would find out who he was. They'd go after Aunt May or after Mary Jane. The Phantom first appearance was in 1936, Lee Falk comic strip.
Yeah, there you go, man. So
even guys, it's like the Phantom and the Shadow were predated by Zorro and Dr. Sin.
And Zorro was never like a ghost, or he was never like an apparition or a spirit. The cool thing about Dr. Sin is you're getting into all that dual identity stuff, and he's a vicar or a holy man, but his name is Dr. Sin. You know what I mean? Like, right. There's all this like kind of dual identity stuff happening. I dig that. I dig that stuff.
One that goes back even farther, although not in. Well, maybe it did show up in comic form. I'll have to look into that. But the Scarlet Pimpernel, are you familiar with that one?
Oh, yeah. That's one of those as well. Yeah. Why don't you explain a little bit about that? And we could find out when that came out as well. Yeah, did he wear a mask?
Yeah, he wore a mask.
It's like Zorro. He was kind of like a Zorro type, right? Because he fenced, right? He used a sword.
Yeah, he used a rapier. That was first published in 1905. So for anyone who hasn't heard of it, it was a historical fiction that was written by a Baroness Orczy, Orczy, published in 1905. She had a stage play that opened up in 1903, and it's about this French vigilante that was. So the story is set during the Reign of Terror, following the French Revolution. And for those who are not familiar with the history, the French had their revolution shortly after America had theirs, and so you're looking at late 1700s, and there was this one of the main consequences of the people overthrowing the monarchy during the French Revolution is that there was this group that decided to quote unquote continue the revolution, and they were going around executing people who they thought were royalists, people who were loyal to the monarchy and the nobility. And so this period called the Reign of Terror is when they're going around just pulling people off the street and killing them because they didn't think they were loyal to the revolutionaries. And so the Scarlet Pimpernel, his real name is Sir Percy Blakeney, and it's kind of like a Bruce Wayne Batman type of thing. And I kind of wonder if he was one of the inspirations for Batman, because you've got the pompous, wealthy playboy Sir Percy during the day, but at night he's this swashbuckling swordsman and escape artists. And he's got a quote-unquote band who assist him, and they're the only ones who know of his secret identity. And much like Batman, who has his bat logo, the Scarlet Pimpernel, his logo or his calling card is a flower, and it's called a Scarlet Pimpernel.
And then Zorro has his D, and
fights on behalf of the people, and goes around trying to right wrongs and that sort of thing.
And the thing is, you just trumped me, because the Scarlet Pimpernel is 1909, and then Dr. Sin is 1950.
So you've got in 1905,
and then Zorro is 1990.
You've got Dr. Sin, you've got the Scarlet Pimpernel. You've
all
got
coming out within what,
Zorro
5 to 10 years
after.
All coming out 5 to 10
the
years.
Dual identity calling card. Zorro had his Z that he would carve into a bad guy's chest or a tree or whatever.
Yeah.
Scarlet Pimpernel had his. And then did Dr. Sin have a calling card?
No, he did not. But I think even like the Green Hornet
You're
had,
muted, by the way.
There was literally, I think, a calling card. I think he put out cards like that would like, if there was a card there was something that he left that would strike fear. I can't remember exactly what it was, but yeah, it's interesting that all these ideas came out 5 to 10 years from each other, and how they really did inspire more the modern masked vigilante, because all these characters have, masked vigilanteism at its core, and it's also the dual identity of somebody that is in the know, or upper crust, or in a position that they are in the know and that can help people, like they have power, money, influence, things like that choose to kind of become mass vigilantes and right those wrongs in the night. And I don't know, I dig this stuff, man. I think it's cool. So there were also comic books on Dr. Sin, the Scarecrow. So I imagine these came out in the 60s as well. He rides the marshes like a demon ghost, striking terror into the hearts of evil men throughout the land. And the one thing about the series that I like, the Disney TV series, is that I believe at the end they talk about the new world, that there's freedoms, and there isn't the oppression of the king and and all that stuff. And so at the end, I think some of the characters that they rescue, the Scarecrow does, because they're rescuing these guys that have been kidnapped and things like that. Right. I believe they send them to America to colonize America.
Oh, okay. That's
cool. So it's pretty neat. I guess Walt Disney on that same show did a lot of promotion, and these were the masks. And the cool thing about at least the Scarecrow's masks, they're articulated. So the mouth is kind of it's somewhat of an appliance, so it's glued to his lip. So when his mouth moves, the mask moves as well. So it's kind of cool. So it's not just a bag that's put over the head. And I'm not sure, but I think the bird character, this like eagle or an owl, I think the eyes move as well. They go back and forth. So those would be pretty frightening if you saw them in the middle of the night.
Well, especially if you had never heard of or seen anything like that before. You know, if you were back in the time where those stories took place.
Yeah, and then I think that the skeletal character, the one in the middle, I don't think you can see his eyes. So that would be pretty off-putting as well. Oh, there he is. That's pretty frightening. So yeah, they threaten people with guns. I'm not sure, but I don't think they actually kill anybody on the show, but they intimidate the shit out of them. Scare the hell out of them, I guess is the better idea. Yeah, so there's the Wikipedia that I got a lot of the information from, and then there's this that is mass vigilante. I just looked up the definition, or just vigilante justice. It just fascinates me. Vigilante justice, as defined by the Legal Information Institute, is the action of a single person or group of people who claim to enforce the law but lack the legal authority to do so. Vigilantism itself is not illegal under U.S. law, but involves actions that are oftentimes illegal. So vigilantism is not illegal here, but a lot of the ways they go about, implementing it are illegal. So that's interesting.
I just put in the chat a list of old-timey vigilantes with dual identities if anybody wants to poke around on the internet and do a little more reading.
Oh, cool. Is this the one here? Old-timey vigilantes with dual identities: Scarlet Pimpernel, Dr. Sin, Zorro, the Shadow, the Spider. Do tell. When did the Spider come out?
That was a new one on me. Let me get that one pulled up here.
Because what's interesting about this is if you think about even people like Stan Lee, Siegel and Schuster, Bob Kane, Bill Finger, those guys, these were the things that influenced them.
Yep.
So there's definitely there's lineage and there's ties to these ideas.
Okay, so the Spider was another pulp hero. He was created in 1933 by Harry Steger for Popular Publications, and that was to compete with Street and Smith's The Shadow.
Okay, so that was in the 40s as well?
1933.
33.
So Great Depression, before World War II.
The Shadow was in the 30s or the 40s? I thought it was the 40s.
Well, he was definitely in the 40s, but I thought he originally appeared in the 30s. Let me see here.
Wow, okay. Because Batman is 40s, right? Early 40s, is that correct? Or is that 30s as well?
Late 30s. I want to say 39, but I can verify that.
Okay, I think you're right. I always think late 30s, early 40s, yeah. So we're just caretakers of these ideas, you guys. We just keep telling these stories. Like Black and White is definitely a derivative of these ideas of vigilante justice, because the whole catchphrase, in a world where law and order is often blurred to gray, justice can only be black and white. So that's like a vigilante mantra. It's like sometimes, law and order, what we recognize as law and order isn't often just. It's not always correct.
So here's a little tidbit for you, Art. And this was something I hadn't known either. I thought that the Shadow started in the pulps, but he actually started as a radio show narrator.
Oh, the Phantom or the Shadow?
Shadow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He was a radio, and so was the Lone Ranger, and so was the Green Hornet.
Yeah. So the Shadow, he debuted in 1930 on the Detective Story Hour as the narrator, and he was so popular, people were requesting for pulp stories of him, and there weren't any. So Street and Smith decided to write some. So they got Walter B. Gibson to create a magazine based on the Shadow. And then so they had a radio show going, and they had the pulp magazine at the same time. And then in 1931, they did a regular series called The Shadow Magazine.
Yeah, because didn't the Shadow when he wasn't his own show, it was always like the Shadow knows. So he was just like this all-knowing entity that was it was like borderline supernatural, right? Because it was like, how does he know? How does he get in these places? And wasn't there was something about like that he did transform, like he wore the scarf over his face, but his face actually, like he channeled some kind of evil or something, because didn't his face actually transform as well?
Yeah, it did. And the film with Alec Baldwin in the 90s, they were faithful to that. They gave him a big nose, and I don't remember if they actually changed his skin tone with makeup or if they did it with lighting. But yeah, that was in print and then also in the film.
Was he channeling some kind of like evil spirit or something? Like, because I can't remember. The Shadow is one of those things, like I bought a bunch of the radio show, but they don't get into the origin at all. So they do talk about the transformation, but they don't say the origin of it. Like a lot of that stuff, like even the Green Hornet, it's hard to find any kind of origin stuff to it.
So I found that Batman's first appearance was 1939.
Okay. Yeah.
Detective 27.
So we have Spirits Car, also a big fan of pulp magazines of the time. Weird Tales, yep. Published H.P. Lovecraft and Robert E. Howard. Robert E. Howard novels are the best. You guys, almost every incarnation of that character is not good. Read the Robert E. Howard novels. And what was the there was Solomon Kane. There were like
Solomon Kane, Cole the Conqueror.
Yeah, there were some cool characters. There was other characters that he created that were really cool.
Red Sonja. Those were all Robert E. Howard. And he it's interesting with Conan, even the most popular version as far as film goes was Arnold Schwarzenegger in Conan the Barbarian, but there were a lot of liberties taken.
Horrible. There's a scene, if anybody loves Arnold, I'm sorry, but there's a scene where Thulsa Doom is stepping on Arnold's hands, and he's like, like he's like, oh, it hurts me. Like and I'm like, nah, that's not Conan. Conan wouldn't peep a word, man. He would take all that pain in silence, and then he would just harbor it, and then he'd kill that guy later. You know what I mean? He wasn't a whiner, he wasn't a bitcher, he wasn't a moaner, he wasn't a groaner. And Arnold's like, while he's stepping on his fingers. I'm like, no.
Yeah, he was man, it's almost hard to describe Conan as he was written originally. It's almost like the walking incarnation of testosterone. And when he's described as a barbarian, that is absolutely what he was. He wasn't a comedian. He wasn't
Conan the comedian,
a philosopher. You know, he was a barbarian.
The thing is, when you read the stories, it's kind of like when you used to read like the old Hulk comics, and even like they're doing it with the Mandalorian, is like these characters borderline good and bad. Like they're really neither. And they don't even necessarily have their own moral code. Well, I guess they do, but it's not like the world's. You know what I mean? So sometimes like Conan might help somebody, and then one story Conan might destroy somebody. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't want to say that he was just all self-serving, because there were altruistic aspects to the character, but he wasn't like a goody per se. When they say he's a barbarian, he's a barbarian. Like the guy womanized, he drank, he had questionable morality. You know what I mean? Like he did like ends justify the means kind of activities. And that's what was interesting about the character. But when Hollywood, when they retell these stories, they always try to make Conan seem like he's a good guy, like he's an altruistic person. But I never really thought of him as that. You know, he's the character that does.
I was gonna say something, but Metal Movies and Brewskis beat me to it. He's an anti-hero.
Yeah.
Kind of like the Punisher. Today's, if you try and read the Punisher today, it's nowhere close to what the Punisher was in the prime years of that comics publication. The Publisher was an anti-hero. He wasn't a good guy or a bad guy. He could be either or both on a given day, just depending on the circumstances.
Right. I remember as a kid, like that was the fascinating thing about the Hulk, because I didn't understand that character, and it was fascinating to read. It's like 1 minute, it's kind of like Frankenstein. When Frankenstein drowns the little girl, like 1 minute he's like the guy that's being persecuted and you feel bad for him, and then he's the guy that destroys the city. You know what I mean? Like there's this real weird duality. And I was just used to good and evil comics, and then the old Hulk stuff, it wasn't set up clearly like good and evil. The Hulk just kind of did stuff. You know what I mean? Like he didn't necessarily, he didn't have the intellect to go, he didn't have the complete intellect to do these things. But like 1 minute he could be like kicking all these guys' butts and putting them all in the hospital and collapsing buildings on people. And then he sees a deer out in the meadow and he goes and tries to pet it. You know what I mean? Like There's this weird duality with the character. And I remember as a kid, I was like, holy crap, this guy's psychotic. Like this, I don't know what this guy's going to do next, Yeah,
I remember reading interviews with Stan Lee and Jack Kirby about the early days of them publishing the Hulk, and it struck me as they saw him more as a force of nature. There's another dual identity. There's the monster who's like this force of nature, and then there's the meek, mild-mannered Dr. Banner. And of course their biggest influence with the Hulk was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, who appeared in novels much earlier than that. But they gave the Hulk, kind of the superhero version of Mr. Hyde. And what struck me in those interviews as they were talking about their influence of Jekyll and Hyde, the man, the monster, is that I kind of see the early incarnation of the Hulk as like a forest fire, where you don't want to be caught in the middle of it. It'll completely destroy you. Then there's really nothing you can do. And yet, after the forest fire is over, good comes out of it. New life grows in an area that has been subject to wildfires. There's new plant life, which brings new animal life that doesn't appear in old growth forests. It can only appear after a forest fire comes through and new stuff comes up. So I kind of look at the Hulk as, he might destroy, he might save. You never really knew. He was a force of nature, not somebody that you could just talk to and convince one way or the other necessarily.
Right, and that's why we're just talking about a bunch of stuff. We're just having fun. We're all shut-ins right now, so we're just going all over the place. This is a great conversation. I'm having a bunch of fun, and I hope everybody in the chat is as well. But one of the things is when Marvel and DC try to create this universe, right, and they try to cross these characters over into the other world, I think they lose something about their originality, and tonally they have to change these characters so they can fit into a bigger world. But like Hollywood has never got the Hulk right. The TV series is the only thing, and because they had to, because of the budget, they got into the more duality of the characters. But even still, that was more like, you don't want to make me mad, and then like it's just kind of this one-trick pony. But the thing about the Hulk is that there's this complexity with the character that there's a psychology there that they never tapped into. Kind of like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, where Dr. Jekyll kind of sometimes wants Mr. Hyde to come out. You know what I mean? Sometimes he wants to go and be this crazy party guy, womanizing, drinking, you know what I mean? Because he's this very controlled scientist. So I've never seen them cinematically deal with the character like this. It's basically just like, you don't want to get me mad. He gets mad and he rages, and that's fun. I like that, but there is this deeper side, and it's not just like, I need to find a cure, because I don't like to become the Hulk, because I don't like what he does. That's part of it too. But like we said, like, there's stuff that character could do that would be very perplexing. It would be hard to tell the story, but they used to do in the comics, because you don't know whether to root for him or to want him to be hunted down and killed. Do you know what I mean? Like, there is that duality with the character.
Yeah.
To use your analogy, he could burn down the forest, and then at some point he could actually help evacuate the forest. You know what I mean? Like that's the weird aspects of the Hulk. Is he's almost childlike, where he just reacts to things, but there's also this side that he can be compassionate. He can show compassion. So I think there's like this really crazy dynamic and complexity to the character that they never ever get into. Now he just seems like he's kind of a one-trick pony.
Yeah, I loved that show when I was a kid, and I'm not sure if I picked up the element of tragedy more in the way Banner was portrayed, or the way the Hulk was portrayed. But I think that was one of the great strengths of that show, because even though it was kind of a one-trick pony in terms of, the classic line, "Don't make me angry, you wouldn't like me when I get angry," I thought that, as an adult looking back, I think one of the appeals to me of the show as a kid is not just, the transformation and then, watching the Hulk do all this crazy stuff, but it was also this element of sadness. And depending on the episode, you might see it with Banner or you might see it with the Hulk, but I picked up on it even as a young kid that, he got the strength and the invulnerability, or at least in the show it was more like resistance to damage. It wasn't quite invulnerability, but that came at a heavy cost.
Yeah.
And, he was a sad character at the end of the day.
Yeah, because ultimately Bruce Banner, or in that David Banner, for some reason.
Oh, I could tell you the story when you're done talking.
Okay. Is that he has to shoulder the burden of what the monster just did. So his conscience is always heavy because of the sins of the monster, and he knows who the monster is, which it is him. It's great ideas. Who was the writer? We got to give him credit for, holy shit, I can't think of it. The writer of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde.
Oh, that was
Robert. What was this? Robertson?
Robert Louis Stevenson.
Robert Louis Stevenson, thank you. If you guys haven't, I don't know if it's still up, but Professor Geek did a great 2-part on the books and stuff like that. They were a lot of fun to listen to. But go ahead, tell your story about the series.
Oh, about why they called him David Banner.
David Banner, yeah.
And I think they may have actually introduced him as David Bruce Banner.
On the headstone it says David Bruce.
David Bruce Banner. Okay, so Stan Lee himself, he was asked this, and I forget which interview it was. I wish I had a link so that you guys in the chat could go watch this for yourself, but there was this interview that Stan was doing, and he was asked why was the character David Banner in the show and not Bruce Banner like in the comics. And Stan makes this kind of disgusted noise, and he said, "It's so stupid, but here's the reason." He said, we were pitching the show, and the studio loved it, and they buy a series, and they offered us this and that and blah blah blah, and we get to the point where we're gonna sign the contract, and they say, "There's just one more thing. You can't have a character named Bruce." And then Stan says, "Why not?" And then this studio bigwig, and remember, this was the late 70s. So this studio bigwig says, "Because Bruce is a name for homosexuals. We can't have a homosexual."
Oh my gosh, I have heard this story. Oh my gosh, this is Hollywood, the homophobic Hollywood.
Is typical. I mean, you wouldn't get necessarily that same response today, obviously, but the stupidity of the reasons for why Hollywood producers do some of the things they do, this is a classic example. So Stan, tried to, convince this guy it's not a name for a homosexual. The character in the comics is not a homosexual. He's very clearly heterosexual. Look, here's Betty, and there's Bruce and Betty and blah, 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 blah. The guy would hear none of it. He said, and the kicker was that the executives said whether or not they signed for the series would all come down to them changing the name from Bruce. So they came up with a compromise. It was David Bruce Banner for the TV show.
Yeah, you guys, let's look at Hollywood for our morality. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I do remember there was like this guy was kind of Bruce Lee, right? And it was called They Call Me Bruce. And I think that was kind of a play on, like, if you were Bruce, you were kind of like, a little bit swishy. Mm-hmm. But I don't know where that came from, because I remember at the time, like when I was a kid, you go, "Oh, he's Bruce," you do that like little like lisp and stuff like that. So I have no idea where that came from, but I did hear that like Hollywood was a little homophobic with the name. I had forgotten about it.
I don't know why they settled on Bruce in particular. When I was coming up in the 80s, that wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
So I really don't know.
Well, do you remember like even Three's Company? I think they ditched it later, but that guy had to act gay so he could get into the apartment, like rent the apartment with the 2 girls.
Yeah, Jack. One of the running gags on the show was Mr. Furley, kind of saying, "Don't tell me, I don't want to know." Yeah. But you talk about like a weird concept that probably wouldn't fly today. Oh no, never. Yeah. And so one of the running gags was periodically Mr. Furley, the landlord, he would come over unannounced, and Jack was with some girl, and he would have to quickly somehow turn that moment into some demonstration of his homosexuality. Yeah. To keep up the ruse. Yeah. The ruse, yeah.
You didn't, but Mr. Furley actually seemed more gay than Jack
Oh,
did.
he seemed very flamboyant. I think
Those
that
big collars and the loud
yeah,
shirts.
the silk scarves tied around his neck. I think that was
The
a
joke.
a subtle. Um, I think it was a subtext that the writers were making to try to, but they were getting it past the TV censors.
Yeah, there was actually, he had two landlords before. They were a married couple, right? And so their joke was that the wife was never touched by him. Like for some reason, either he didn't find her attractive or maybe he was gay.
Yeah, I remember that there was a couple, but I don't remember the details.
I think they were the landlords before Mr. Furley.
That sounds right.
But that show, you guys don't watch it. It's absolutely horrible. I don't want to make it sound like this is memory lane and we're all like, yeah, that was a great show. That was a really horrible show. It's just kind of a fun premise.
Yeah.
And I think it's from Britain. I think it was one of the first, like
One of the
before The Office and Faulty Towers. And there were a couple, right, that they brought over. I think Three's Company was a British TV show.
Yeah, I don't know the show it was based on, but yeah, there's a bunch of them that started in either the UK or the US, and then the idea would get ripped off by the other, and they would do their own version of it. Although sometimes the producers of the original show would actually shop it over in the other market.
To the American markets or whatever.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. But do you want to start wrapping this up, Joe?
Sure.
Thank you so much for bringing. Joe is like he's like what was that guy? Like he's like the professor. He's like the know it guy, like the guy you go to when you need some facts. So you always bring a nice level to things because I just don't. I have an interest in it, but I don't retain that stuff very well. So I don't talk about it too good.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, my father-in-law for years used to try and get me to try out for Jeopardy, and his motivation was so that I could win a bunch of money and give it to him.
He was exploiting you. He was
Yeah.
exploiting a young Thunderbuns.
Yeah.
As a parting shot, maybe I'll try to put it in the chat. I think this is a documentary. It's called Dr. Sin, The History of the Legend, and it's on YouTube. So it's Dr. Sin, The History of the Legend. And I think Brett Blevins, the comic book artist, is in there. And he talks, and I think there might be some drawings that he does of Dr. Sin as the Scarecrow. And the funny thing is, that was a week or so ago that Walter Simonson posted on Facebook that, do you remember this? And it was Dr. Sin. It was the Scarecrow stuff. And that was pretty cool. So if you were a 60s kid, like I said, I was 2 years old and I remember that stuff. Yeah, it was very cool. And I believe you can get them all on YouTube. I believe I've seen them all. The documentary's up on YouTube. So if you guys get bored later today, go check that stuff out. And Joe and I covered a bunch of wonderful stuff because I know you can get the Shadow radio stuff. You can get, I mean, if you search around the Green Hornet stuff, Lone Ranger, there's a ton. And I don't know if you can download the books. The what was his name now?
Russell Thorndike.
Yeah, Russell Thorndike books, yeah. But there's a whole slew of those, and I want to say that I think he killed the character in the first book, and then the publisher was like, "You killed the cash cow," and so somehow they brought him back, and then they serialized the concept after that. So it's a lot of fun. The Scarecrow Romney March on YouTube, or you can buy it on Amazon, but it's like, it's like $100 or something, right?
There are different versions that were released, and there's one I found that was over $300. It was some kind of
It's in a tin, right?
Yeah, it's in a tin. It's a primo Disney collector's edition, but there were others that were far more reasonable.
Yeah, I think there's varying quality levels on YouTube, but because some of them are serialized where there's because I think what Disney wanted to do is he wanted to just make a movie like a one-shot movie, but what they did is they filmed it in a serialized way, but then could be edited together as one movie. So I'm not sure if it was cinematically or theatrically released, but that was the plan. I can't remember the details of it. So when you go to YouTube, there's the series that you can find, but I think there's also the edited together version. But I would actually watch the serialized stuff because I think there's more detail in it, but I'm not 100%.
I'm putting in the chat Magical World of Disney and Wonderful World of Disney if people want to look up those series. There's, in case anybody missed the beginning of the show, this show that Art wanted to talk about today, The Scarecrow of Romney Marsh, was one of the many movies and shows that Walt Disney produced, and the Disney Company, I should say, also produced after Walt's death. And these were series where family-friendly programming, and you never quite knew what you were going to get, but you were always sure that it was going to be well made, and it was going to be something interesting, whether if the parents were more interested or the kids. It was appointment viewing, really, up until I think it was 1991.
It went that long? Wow, I'm surprised.
Yeah, from 54 to 91 for Magical World of Disney. And on Wonderful World, I think that one, did that one last into the mid-90s? I can't remember.
I don't know, but I'm trying to find the article that I just glanced over, if it was on Disney Plus or not. But if you have Disney Plus, look it up. It might be there, or it might be coming there soon. It seems like one of those things that they should put on Disney Plus, because I know there's a lot of it's like one of those cult classic things, and if you look it up, the movies, the DVDs and stuff are very, very expensive. So there's kind of a rarity as well. So it's hard to find. So it seems like it'd be a perfect fit for Disney Plus, since it's a subscription based. You have to pay for it.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. This was a very interesting show. Thank you, Joe and Art. Yeah, I think we make a good combination. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys for joining the stream. This was a lot of fun.
Yes, and if you didn't hear early on, the big news T-Bear here, and Sheldon helps remind us this, that Kevin Tomslet helped us get over the top for the Chrono Mechanics Indiegogo in demand shop, and we had a 35K stretch goal, which was a 116-page movie script. And once we got there, then we were going to get a movie script into each and every one of the backers' hands. But with this coronavirus and a lot of the cabin fever stuff going on, my wife and I we talked about a lot of this coronavirus stuff. And we also talked about just playing against it a little bit and trying to do our small little part to entertain you guys while we're all quarantined and suffering from cabin fever. So we are going to start sending out PDF versions of the movie script. So if you back Chrono Mechanics, you should be starting to get your PDF version of the movie script. So we're not going to wait till the book goes to print or anything like that, we're going to start this week sending out PDFs of the Chrono Mechanics movie script so you guys can enjoy it. It'll just give you a little bit of entertainment, so you can forget about the outside world for an hour or so, and hopefully enjoy it. And let me know when you get it. Let me know what you think of it. I think it's a lot of fun. I'm very proud of it. And if Hollywood wasn't in stupid remake, they're stuck in this pattern of just like taking established IPs and remaking them, or just they got sequel-itis. Maybe they'd open their eyes to something new, and unique, instead of making the same crap over and over again. But anyways, it'll be a lot of fun for you guys. And look, I guess they're going to come to your email, so look in your emails. And sometimes they go to your spam. So if you back the book in the next couple days, not only check your emails, but check your spam as well, because sometimes they go there, these PDF files. So thank you guys so much. Please come over to Chrono Mechanics. We are still in demand. Back the book. If you back it now, man, you're going to get all these freebies in the form of stretch goals. So go there, check out what you'll get automatically if you buy a book. And once again, thank you to Kevin. And I had a conversation with Dynamite Entertainment about the Batman black and white Vampirilla crossover variant cover, and we're shooting for this coming Monday for it to go live. So,
oh wow!
Yeah, so you can get that cover and put it into your collection. Yeah, and I believe I'm going to have a drawing tier on it as well. So I'm going to do some doodles for you guys. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I think we're going to have the commemorative coins. I think like the Cyber Frog campaign did. Possibly trading cards. I'm pushing for a lithograph of the artwork, and then, like I said, the drawing tier where I'll do drawings of Vampirilla and black and white for you guys. So that will be a lot of fun. And then I have the pre-launch black and white second chance campaign, which is in the description. So there's a link in the description to the second launch black and white campaign and the Chrono Mechanics campaign. But the black and white one is, if you sign up now for the pre-launch and give us your email address, you will get a trading card, absolutely free, a black and white trading card with the purchase or with the backing of a book. So all I need is your email address, and then you will be notified when this campaign goes live, because it helps, man. The more eyes and the more people you can get on these campaigns at the very beginning, the higher you go up on the Indiegogo algorithms, and then you can get into their top choices area, which does help get more eyes on the page. So I would appreciate that. So go, it won't cost you anything. Just go there, sign up. I know you're bored. I'm giving you a bunch of stuff to do. I'm giving you like homework, job assignments. So very cool. And Joe, do you have a parting shot?
I just wanted to thank everyone for hanging out with us, and I hope everybody stay safe. And the last little bit would be to pitch the Pontificators for this Friday, if that's still on.
Yeah, we're still on, and we're going back and forth with what we're going to choose. But always the fail-safe is the ripple effects of different creative movements in the comics industry. So like Stan and Jack, like early Marvel, or even Bob Kane, or Siegel and Schuster. And hell, since Joe and I have been bringing up all this other stuff, we could even be talking about things that predate these, that gave ripples or put ripples into the creative imaginations that inspired even Stan and Jack, or Bob Kane and Bill Finger and Siegel and Schuster, and all the more modern day comic book stuff. So that should be a lot of fun. So thanks, Joe, for reminding me of that.
Yeah, sure thing. So for those who have never joined in on the Pontificators, it's Fridays at 6 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. Eastern. And we usually go for a couple of hours, and we have a great conversation. We've got a panel with different people, different opinions, and the chat is always rocking and rolling, so it's a great time.
Yeah, and Joe is now a regular on the show, so he's a great addition to the show. And maybe Bob will show up. What's Bob's full name?
Comic Book Bob.
Comic
He
Bob.
joined us last week and received an invite to come back, so we may see Comic Book Bob Friday evening as well.
Yeah, so we have Chester Busby the third. We have oh my gosh, Todd Mulrooney, and then Joe, and then Comic Book Bob. Sometimes we have Zach Bradley in, but he favors what is it, the auction sometimes when Mike does the auction. Mike Millar. But yeah, I can't fault him. I'm gonna make a couple bucks. So very good. I think I'm getting hungry. I'm getting a little tired. It's almost 2:00 here. So thanks everybody. Thanks everybody in the stream. Thanks Joe. And yeah, we'll see you this Friday on Pontificators. Take care.
Take care, everyone.